तभी तो बनेगा संपन्न भारत। स्वस्थ भारत जब रहेगा तभी तो बनेगा संपन्न भारत। स्वस्थ भारत जब रहेगा तभी तो भारत संपन्न बनेगा।
नमस्कार, एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है। हम अपना कार्यक्रम ये जारी रख रहे हैं 12 घंटे की टेलीथॉन यहाँ पर एनडीटीवी पर। पिछले कुछ घंटे में जो हमने चर्चा की वो थी स्वास्थ्य को लेकर के, कैसे कोई पीछे ना छूट जाए। लेकिन अब तक हमने क्या हासिल किया है, पिछले 75 साल में हमने क्या हासिल किया है और क्या बदलने की ज़रूरत है। एक चीज़ जो डेटॉल अलग अलग तरीके से रिसर्च के माध्यम से बताना चाहती है और उसकी चर्चा भी यहाँ पर मंच पर हुई थी, रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट, यानी कि आप स्वास्थ्य में जितना पैसा लगा रहे हैं उसके अनुपात में आप पा कितना रहे हैं, वापस आपकी अर्थव्यवस्था को कितना मिल रहा है। तो इस दृष्टिकोण से सोचने की क्या अब हमको बहुत बहुत आवश्यकता है, ख़ास तौर से जब महामारी फैली हुई है। अब नहीं सोचेंगे तो कब सोचेंगे। मैं स्वागत करना चाहता हूं सौम्या स्वामीनाथन, चीफ साइंटिस्ट, वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, JVR प्रसाद राव, फॉर्मर यूनियन हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी, और मार्था चेन हमारे साथ जुड़ गई हैं। आप डेवलपमेंट प्रैक्टिशनर और स्कॉलर हैं, और मार्था जो हैं वो टॉम ऑल्टर जी की बड़ी बहन हैं। टॉम ऑल्टर साहब ने बच्चन साहब के साथ काम भी किया है और आपकी यादें जुड़ी हुई हैं। आप सब लोगों का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आई वुड आस्क डॉक्टर रॉय टू आस्क द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन ऑफ सौम्या स्वामीनाथन।
Okay, thank you very much for joining us, Soumya Swaminathan. You know, we are talking now about 75 years of India's health and the hygiene story. What would you say are the biggest learnings, and what can we think about for the future, for the next 15 years?
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. I can think of many, many achievements, but let me just pick 3 or 4. The first one, I think, is elimination of polio and a few other vaccine preventable diseases. And this is thanks to the wonderful expansion of immunization coverage. I still remember when I was a young doctor, I used to see many cases of newborn babies with tetanus, a horrible disease. Maternal and neonatal tetanus was eliminated thanks to immunization. So was smallpox and polio. So I would really count that as one of the top achievements. The second one would be in the area of maternal and child health. During the NDG era between 2000 and 2015 in particular, but also if you look back 75 years, we've come a long way in reducing maternal mortality as well as child mortality. And this is thanks to improvements in antenatal care, immunization of pregnant women, institutional deliveries, and the care of the newborn after birth. So along with that, we have expanded the coverage of family planning, and we've seen significant and sustained reductions in the total fertility rate. That is the number of children that each couple is having, and that obviously helps to control the overall population growth. The third area, I think, is really the vision right from the beginning for universal health coverage and having a system of healthcare in India which goes from primary healthcare to secondary and then tertiary healthcare, to provide that to people without them having to incur a lot of financial expenditure. This is something that we're still on the path. We're not yet where we want to be. But I think really bringing together programs like the Jal Jeevan Abhiyan, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, as well as Ayushman Bharat, we know that to have good health, water, sanitation, hygiene are also extremely important. So bringing all of these as national programs and focusing on safe water, on sanitation and universal health coverage, I think is, as I said, it's a journey that India is on, but is exactly the right path to be. And finally, I would say one of the biggest achievements perhaps has been that India has become the pharmacy of the world. And if you look at diseases like TB or HIV, over 80% of drugs used across the world today are affordable and quality generic drugs from India.
This question is for Mr. Prasad Rao. So this is Amitabh Bachchan. So you've been the health secretary and you've been working across several national, international bodies, worked with healthcare systems very closely. 75 years from now, where and what are we lagging in? What could we be working on to make improvements in whatever work we've done?
Thank you very much. If you look at the present situation and what we have learned from the last 75 years of working in health sector, the biggest challenge that we face even now is having a political dialogue, a political discourse on health. Unfortunately, 75 years down the line, this has not happened. We have individual programs, definitely at the national level and also at the state level coming up with a lot of visibility and doing some great things. But looking at health as a whole, we have not been able to generate a political dialogue, a political discourse. And health means is only 40% government of India, 60% in the states, these 29 or 30 states that we have. How many of them have regarded health as something which is at the top of political agenda? How many elections have been fought on health issues? Very few. In the 60s, if you recall, we had Garibi Hatao or Roti Kapda Makan. They were like slogans. Then later on came Bijli Sadak Pani. But did we ever have a slogan like Swasth, Shiksha and Paryavaran? Is it not high time we bring it to the top of the political agenda at every level? I think that for me will be the biggest game changer if you really want to look at a healthy nation with healthy people 75 years down the line. Now you may say that there are 29 states. How can we bring all of them together on a common platform? It happened in a much more difficult area like taxation. We have seen the GST regime coming in with the participation of all the states. Even 10 years back, nobody ever thought it will happen, but it has happened because there is political will. Political will at the Government of India level and also at the state level. The same, I think, measure of political will is what is necessary for health also. I think that is the real game changer which can bring health back into the agenda. Second thing is, if you look at some of the major challenges, I would put nutrition as one of the biggest challenges we are facing. 40 million children, who are stunted and 25 million children at the level of child wasting. This is unacceptable in a country like India in the 2021. So I think nutrition is one big failure in the last 75 years. At least, thank God, it has now been put into prominence and a lot more investment is going into the area. But the real challenge is implementation. Because when you look at health, we only look at the health ministries and the health departments. There are several contributory factors to health, which we call the social determinants. And nutrition is one of them. Sanitation, water supply, women education, girls education, all these contribute to good health. But how much of importance they are being given as contributory factors to health? In their own area, they may be having priority for different purposes. But as a policy coherence and as program coherence, we have not been able to bring all these together into one common agenda and we are having a common minimum program on health for the entire country. I think that to me will be the biggest challenge for the next 75 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I'd like to ask Martha Chen a question. You know, you've been and are a renowned development scholar and have worked extensively in India, particularly with the poor and the working class in an informal economy. We are today talking about how a healthy India can be a prosperous India, like Saksham Bharat. How true is it that the informal workers you've worked with, the women in particular, during all these years in India, they could contribute more if they were taken care of in a better manner, given better health facilities?
Thank you so much for that question, because I do see the informal workforce of India as sort of a link between health and prosperity. Let me explain. We know that 90% of all workers in India are informal. That's about 415 million workers. We also know that they provide a lot of our basic goods and services. They provide our roti and makan. They also provide childcare, transport, waste management services, and more. Their main asset, in addition to their traditional skills, is their physical labor. So often they are undermined by chronic medical conditions. And if they are injured or fall ill, their earnings stop almost immediately. And if they're hospitalized, they draw down their savings and they go deeper into debt. And this is because the informal workers live off daily earnings and they do not have health insurance or paid sick leave. So we have to ensure that they're not left behind by health going forward. And we need to recover the economy from the COVID crisis in a way that brings the informal workers along in the recovery, a recovery from below.
TV's gone.
They have lost work and earnings during the COVID crisis, and they are handicapped going forward because they've lost their assets, they've lost savings, depleted savings. So the recovery needs to build from below and provide not only the health, but also the economic stimulus that they need to recover and for India to prosper if they prosper. Thank you.
All right. I just want to ask Soumya a question. You know, India is a young nation and we've been progressing extremely well despite the fact that we're a young nation. How much has the progress of these 75 years of India's health and hygiene story been pushed back by this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic?
The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the delivery of essential health services in almost every country, including in India. And therefore, there was a setback, whether it was in tuberculosis or whether it was in non-communicable diseases or whether it was in delivery of antenatal and child health services. And also created a big backlog of things like people who need surgical attention and people who might need rehabilitation and palliation services. So there needs to be a good stock take of where exactly more attention will need to be paid in the coming months, and not only to catch up, but also to ensure that we create resilience within the system so that if there are future health shocks, and there are bound to be health shocks in the future, that we can deal with those without having to compromise on all of the other essential health services.
Soumya
The
ji,
COVID pandemic has also increased the rates of poverty and likely to increase undernutrition in the community. So we need to really look at the data very carefully because increasing rates of poverty and undernutrition could drive up the incidence of diseases like tuberculosis, but also other diseases that are related to poverty. So this is something that we will need to watch closely and take preemptive action on.
Okay. Martha Chen, JVR Prasad Rao and Soumya Swaminathan ji, thank you so much for joining us. और अब रेतीले राजस्थान से आपके लिए ये प्रस्तुति है कालबेलिया डांस, जो कि बहुत ही प्रसिद्ध है राजस्थान का कालबेलिया डांस. ये प्रस्तुति आप लोगों के सामने. All right, that was a performance of the from the ever so colorful state of Rajasthan. Beautiful Kalbelia performance. Let's move on. I would like to introduce Mr. Neeraj Jain, Country Director India of PATH. Thank you very much, Mr. Jain, for joining us. We have Dr. Indra Chakravarti, former Director and Dean of All India Institute of Hygiene and Public Health of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and Susan Ferguson, UN Women Representative for India. Neeraj, I would like to come to you and ask you this question. You know, we've been talking about 75 years of health, hygiene and nutrition. Immunization is one of the most cost-effective public health interventions and largely responsible for reduction of under 5 mortality rate. And immunization is something which is which seems to gain even more traction and prominence as far as COVID is concerned. While today India is a leading producer and exporter of vaccines, it is still home to 1/3 of the world's unimmunized children. Clearly, a lot more needs to be done.
Thank you, Sanket. Thank you for having me here. Good to see you, Mr. Bachchan, as usual. Yeah, immunization is clearly one of the most cost-effective interventions when it comes to return on investment from an economic perspective. We've also seen how our COVID program has been completely sort of, deeply involved in the whole idea of how do we immunize the populations. I think we've achieved a lot over the last many years. We have reduced our under 5 mortality rate. We've reduced our maternal mortality, etc. But I think there is still a lot to do. We also have reduced we have introduced a lot of new vaccines in the immunization program over the last few years. The rotavirus being one. The pneumococcal vaccine being another, and where we've also been, like Soumya said, we've been the pharmacy of the world, which means a lot of the vaccines which are now globally available to low and middle income countries are coming out of India. The pneumococcal being one, which is a WHO approved vaccine from Serum Institute, the rotavirus from Bharat as well as Serum, both being there. I think there's still a lot of work to be done because in terms of reach, we are still at about 70-75%. There are still dropouts. There are still challenges there. We've also seen immunization take a huge hit during the COVID pandemic. For our future generations, it's absolutely important that our routine immunization programs work much more effectively. We actually go to those hard to reach. And, the whole, for this program, taking everyone along, I think that's the challenge. How do we look at health equity more than just reaching 70% of the population? How do we ensure that 100% of the population is reached? And we will continue to be the pharmacy of the world. I think that business is growing, that work is growing. We are seen as a very reliable supplier of vaccines. So that will continue to grow as we move forward. Over to you, Sanket.
This is for Indra Chakravarti ji. Indra ji, you have almost 5 decades of experience in public health, food safety, nutrition, what is commonly called WASH, W-A-S-H. What are the areas that you feel we have not been able to improve as much as expected? And why is that so?
So we have, as a matter of fact, India has in the top of where treatment is concerned, curative treatment is concerned. I think India is one of the topmost countries. We even have medical tourism for people coming in for treatment. But I think the place where India has not done so well is the pre-treatment region. How treatment, when you come for treatment, your health is nearly failed already. But I think what you need to do is touch upon the health issues before you need treatment, the preventive part of it. And I think that's where India has to give concentrate more on that. And I would like to sort of summarize just a couple of things which I think are very important. One is nutrition. I think nutrition is a thing which is very important to safekeep health. And if you look into the Indian scenario today, compared to many of the other underdeveloped countries, we are far worse off. For example, if you look at the underweight of children, which is more than 35%, stunting in children, which is nearly 40%, wasting is 21%. As a matter of fact, 1/3 of the wasted children of the world today, more than 46 million, India hosts them. So we have such a large number of children who are wasted. When India has progressed so much in every other way, why should we have undernutrition at such a high rate in this country? Anemia is another thing of great public health concern to, I think, every public health personnel and to every individual. When we looked into the National Family Health Survey of NFHS 4 and NFHS 5, which was the years 2016 and 2019, we found anemia in children and women, instead of going down, has significantly gone up during this period. And we don't know after the pandemic what's really going to happen. It's basically we get iron from the diet, which prevents anemia. But Indians do not have such less iron in their diet. We still do not know. If you look into the Global Nutrition Survey, we find India ranks as low as 170 out of 180 countries where anemia is concerned. So this is something which actually is of great concern to each one of us. And a couple of other things which I feel India should have controlled better is the infant mortality rate, which were more than 28%. The low birth weight of children, these are all normal issues in the life of people. Low birth weight. Children are born, though we have 2,500 as our cut-off weight, many countries have 3,000 grams. In spite of that, our low birth weight is more than 30% even now. The maternal mortality rate has improved over the years, I think from 130 to 110 or 113. But most of the other countries have a double digit.
Right.
So I think these are some of the public health issues which are normal. Nutrition is a normal factor in the human being's life. Why should infants die before 1 year of age? Why should mothers die when they're giving birth to their children?
I'd like to take on from that. Actually, if I could just use that as a basis for asking Susan Ferguson a question. You know, we are talking about leave no one behind over the next 12 hours. That's the kind of theme, One Planet. And we've learned from COVID that if you leave anybody behind and don't vaccinate them, variants develop. Now, tying that up with 75 years of health, hygiene and nutrition in India, gender has been, women in India have been, and the girl child has been slightly left out. And, tell us why gender is critical to advancing this whole concept of leaving no one behind.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the question. Good morning to everyone here today.
Good morning.
Well, I think there's a short answer to that question, and that is that women make up 50% of the population globally. So, if women aren't able to participate in a range of different opportunities, then no country can reach the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's the short answer. But of course, within that, there are many women who are also at the bottom of the pyramid of many of the disadvantaged groups who are maybe living in poverty. So, we form part of this, at the same time, a massive opportunity for economic development. But also there are so many women and girls who are left behind within different categories and marginalised people. So we need to, there's that old saying of a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that is true. Women need to be part of this tide so that the whole country and the globe can reach our full development. So, gender intersects with different identities. If you're disadvantaged because of your gender identity and also your class, caste, ethnicity, these kinds of categories, you really suffer a double or triple disadvantage at times. So this is why we need very specific interventions to unlock the potential for women, because we know that if we do invest in women and gender equality, it will improve everyone's lives. Women tend to reinvest a lot of their income in development opportunities for their families, the education of their children, the health and well-being of their families, improved accommodation and infrastructure. So these are some of the reasons why it's so important to look at gender equality as a part of the leaving no one behind equation.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Just want to ask Neeraj ji, you know, there's been a malaria report in 2018, a world malaria report, according to which India isn't any longer one of the top 3 countries with the highest malaria burden. And we've made impressive gains in the global fight against malaria, haven't we?
Absolutely, sir. I think malaria is one of the success stories that we've had since independence. When we did get independence, there were about 10 lakh people dying of malaria every year in India. And the last malaria report, the numbers are in hundreds actually. Of course, there are people who claim that maybe the numbers are not 100% covering every death because maybe a autopsy was not done and we weren't actually able to determine the cause of death. But either way, the numbers have really come down very, very sharply over the last few years. We are now, while we are in the top 11 countries globally in terms of the total number of malaria morbidities, but in terms of mortality, it's gone down substantially. We are looking at elimination of malaria by 2030 and probably before even. There's been a lot of work that's happened. The challenge with a lot of these diseases, and malaria in the 60s also, we were close to elimination. We lost our sight of it, and then we had a resurgence. This was at the end of the 60s, early 70s. So I think the challenge is going to be going forward that we continue to focus to make sure that we are able to eliminate and we are able to stop transmission. Because until we try to stop transmission, this is not going to go away. And from where we're sitting in the public health space, and we do a lot of work on malaria, we are seeing that traction. We are seeing us going in the right direction. TB is another one that I talk about all the time, where we are making huge gains at this point.
जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। और सूजन फर्गुसन जिस संस्था को जिसका प्रतिनिधित्व कर रही हैं वो है UN Women Livelihoods, और ऐसे ही गांव 40 एक कुछ गांव हैं, और ऐसे ही गांव से मेरे सहयोगी सोहित मिश्रा वहां से रिपोर्टिंग कर रहे हैं। आइए उनके पास चलते हैं जानने के लिए कि जमीन पर क्या काम हो रहा है। सोहित, आइए उनके पास क्या काम हो रहा है।
बिल्कुल संकेत, देखिए अगर ज़मीनी हालात की बात करें तो यहाँ पर UN Women और साथ ही साथ S4S मिलकर ऐसी महिलाओं को उन्होंने एंटरप्रेन्योर बनाया जो आज से 1 साल पहले तक वो मजदूरी करते थे या फिर वो घर पर बैठते थे। वो किस तरह से हुआ, किस तरह से ये सोलर ड्राइंग प्रोजेक्ट के ज़रिए ये वुमेन एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप चल रहा है, इसके बारे में हम बात करेंगे। और इसी के लिए हमारे साथ निधि जी हैं जो को फाउंडर हैं S4S की। निधि जी, पहले आपसे बात करते हैं, फिर हम इन 30 महिलाओं से भी, उनमें से कुछ लोगों से बात करेंगे जिन पर इसका असर पड़ा। अगर आप पहले बता सकें कि किस तरह से क्या कुछ करते हैं जिसकी वजह से जो महिलाएं 1 साल पहले तक वो मजदूरी करती थी खेत में या फिर वो घर पर बैठती थी, आज वो एंटरप्रेन्योर बन चुकी हैं।
UN Women, चैतन्य NGO और S4S ने साथ में मिलके ये यहाँ काम करना शुरू किया। यहाँ हम जो महिलाएं एग्रीकल्चरल लेबर्स थी, डेली वेज वर्कर्स थी, या जिनको कोई रोज़गार नहीं मिल रहा था, उनको ये सोलर पावर्ड फूड प्रोसेसिंग इक्विपमेंट देते हैं। हम इन्हें ट्रेन करते हैं इन इक्विपमेंट्स पे काम करने के लिए, जिससे ये प्रोसेसिंग कर पाए।
अगर आप बता सकें, यानी संकेत जी, होता ये है कि ये जो रॉ मटेरियल है इसे इस तरह से फ्लेक्स बनाने का काम करते हैं।
ये ड्राई ये फ्रेश जिंजर है और इसको ड्राई जिंजर में कन्वर्ट किया जाता है। ये ड्राई जिंजर कई सारे फूड इंग्रेडिएंट्स जैसे कई सारी पैकेज फूड में जाता है एज फूड इंग्रेडिएंट्स। यहाँ पे इन महिलाओं को घर बैठे ये काम मिलता है और एक एश्योर्ड एडिशनल इनकम मिलता है। जो इनकम है वो डायरेक्टली महिलाओं के हाथ में जाता है, जिससे आज ये अपने फूड स्पेंड्स पे कंट्रोल कर पाए। इन्हें जहाँ पे खर्च करना है वहाँ पे कर पाए। इनके फ्रूट्स एंड वेजिटेबल्स जो ये कंज्यूम करें, इनकी मात्रा भी ये बड़ी है। बिकॉज पहले ये राइस खाते थे, अभी बिकॉज इनके पास एडिशनल इनकम है, ये अब कंट्रोल कर पाती है मुझे कहाँ पे स्पेंड करना है। इनमें से कुछ महिलाएं ऐसी भी हैं जो हैंडीकैप्ड है, इनको भी हम लोगों ने रोजगार प्रोवाइड किया है और ये UN Women और चैतन्य के साथ ही पॉसिबल हो पाया है।
तो ऐसे वुमेन की आप बात करें जिनको इससे पहले संकेत जी काम ही नहीं मिल पाता था क्योंकि वो कर नहीं पाती थी। आप हिंदी मराठी जिसमें भी आप बोलना चाहें बोल दें। पहले किस तरह से आप काम कर पाती थी, नहीं कर पाती थी, अब क्या कुछ हो रहा है? पहले अपना नाम बता दीजिए।
मेरा नाम संगीता पीताम्बर पाटिल।
संगीता जी, पहले आप काम मिलता था, नहीं मिलता था, अब क्या कर रही हैं?
खेत मजदूरी।
खेत मजदूरी करते थे, आप मजदूरी करती थी खेत में?
मजदूरी, वहाँ खेती नहीं है हमारी।
खेती नहीं है आपकी। तो कितना फर्क पड़ा है पहले और अभी में? 1 साल पहले आपने नवंबर से शुरू किया, आप देखते रहेंगे तो यहाँ पर क्लीनिंग से लेकर कटिंग से लेकर सोलर ड्राइंग का सारी चीज़ें चल रही हैं। कितना फर्क पड़ा है इस 1 साल में अगर बात की जाए तो?
बहुत फर्क पड़ा है, बहुत अच्छा लगता है हमको, सब अच्छा है, सर परिवार में सब अच्छा लगता है, बहुत पैसे भी मिलता है, बैंक में जाने के लिए मिलता है, हमको सब मिलता है। अच्छा,
पहले कितना कमा लेती थी, अभी कितना कमाती हैं?
पहले 20-25 हज़ार साल का बस
साल का, और अब?
हाँ 40-45 हज़ार मिला।
45-50
हाँ।
तो कहीं ना कहीं इनकी जो इनकम है वो डबल हो चुकी है, और भी कई लोग आप देखेंगे कि लगातार काम यहाँ पर उनकी ओर से शुरू है। मैडम, आप पर कैसा प्रभाव पड़ा, कितना फ़र्क पड़ा वो बताएं। कितना फ़र्क पड़ा, क्या प्रभाव पड़ा?
जो हम 1 साल में 25-30 हज़ार रुपये कमाते थे, उसमें हमारी कर्जा पूरी नहीं हो सकती थी। 1 साल में ही हमने उसका कर्जा ही चुका दिया, और हमारी खान पान में भी बदलाव आ गया है।
आपने कर्जा भी चुका दिया? तो संकेत, ये चीज़ें हुई हैं, और मैं आपको बता दूं, ये जहाँ पर हम मौजूद हैं, ये वडलावडली गांव है जो जलगांव में आता है, और यहाँ पर रोज़गार की इतनी चीज़ें मौजूद नहीं हैं, और ऐसे में अगर जो लोग मजदूरी करते थे उनकी आय दोगुनी हो गई, और वो अब एंटरप्रेन्योर बन चुके हैं, लोगों ने अपना कर्ज चुका लिया, कई लोगों को जो नौकरी नहीं मिल रही थी वो नौकरी मिल रही है। तो इसका ज़मीनी स्तर पर आप कह सकते हैं कि असर देखने मिल रहा है?
Just want to ask a question to Susan Ferguson. Ma'am, we just saw some very interesting and vivid images from Chalisgaon in Aurangabad district. What do you feel are some of the other interventions of United Nations Women in India to deliver on this principle of, leaving no one behind, which is basically the major theme of our program today?
Thank you very much, Amitabh. So I think what we just saw was a really good example of actually giving women more access to basic infrastructure. So often women really don't have that ability to take their enterprises to the next level because they can't get a loan, or they can't access these kinds of infrastructure to improve their livelihoods. So this is something that UN Women really concentrates on in our skilling program. We work with women in very marginalised communities who've dropped out of school, for example, or who've never been able to achieve a diploma to get into a particular area of work. So we have a big skilling program, and we look at how do we get women back into formal education so that they can move on with their lives. But we also look at how can we open up opportunities within the government? How can we help farmers, for example, women farmers who may not be registered as farmers? How can we help them formalise their training and their skills so that they can then be registered as farmers and get access to some of the government support that male farmers have. So that's another example. But importantly, we also work with the national government and state governments on improving women's access to services for gender-based violence. So we know that under the pandemic globally, and this is a huge women's health issue in general, but because of the pandemic, a lot of women are experiencing more violence at home than they used to. So we support the government of India here in helping their one-stop centres provide better support for women and girls who are experiencing violence during the pandemic. Right. So there's some of the ways that we do this. I just would like to emphasise, it's just so important to bring women into the economic dimension, because a few years ago, the McKinsey Institute did a huge research program looking at if there were women in the private sector to the same extent as men, in the formal private sector I'm talking about, India alone could achieve an extra $700 billion economic growth by 2025. I think that time frame has changed now because of the pandemic, but it does demonstrate the critical need to unlock women's potential.
All right, Susan, many thanks for joining us.